October 1977, Los Angeles. Young women start disappearing from the streets. Actresses, students, waitresses. Their bodies turned up days later on the hillsides, naked, strangled, discarded like trash. The city is paralyzed with fear. Women afraid to leave their homes. The LAPD is hunting a killer. But there's something they don't know yet. There isn't one killer. October 18, 1977. A resident in La Crescenta, just north of Los Angeles, is taken out to trash. He sees something on a hillside across the street. At first, he thinks it's a department store mannequin, someone's idea of a sick prank. But as he gets closer, he realizes it's a young woman's body. Her name was Yolanda Washington, 20 years old. She'd been strangled. Her body had been washed clean, positioned on display, left where she'd be found. Within 2 weeks, another body appears, then another and another. November 1st, Judith Miller, 15 years old, found on a hillside in La Crescenta. November 6th, Lissa Caston, 21, waitress, found in Glendale. November 9th, 2 more bodies, Dolores Cepeda, 12 years old, and Sonia Johnson, 14, found together on a hillside near Dodger Stadium. The pattern is unmistakable. Young women and girls, all strangled, all found on hillsides throughout Los Angeles County. The media gives the killer a name, the Hillside Strangler. But the LAPD doesn't know they're looking for 2 men, Kenneth Bianchi and Angelo Buono, cousins, working together, and they're just getting started.
Kenneth Bianchi and Angelo Buono were more than cousins. They were partners in crime. Angelo Buono, 43 years old, an auto upholsterer living in Glendale, married and divorced multiple times, known for his violent temper and hatred of women. He had a workshop behind his house on Colorado Street, a place where he repaired car upholstery. It would become their torture chamber. Kenneth Bianchi, 26, had moved to Los Angeles from Rochester, New York in 1976 to live with his cousin Angelo. He idolized Angelo, saw him as strong, dominant, in control. Together, they started a deadly game. Their method was calculated. They'd pose as police officers, flashing fake badges, pulling women over in their car. The victims would comply, thinking they were being arrested. Instead, they were driven to Angelo's house on Colorado Street. What happened there, we won't describe in detail, but the evidence told a horrific story: torture, strangulation, and then disposal on the hillsides, positioned deliberately for maximum shock value. Between October 1977 and February 1978, they murdered 10 young women and girls: Yolanda Washington, 20, Judith Miller, 15, Elissa Caston, 21, Jane King, 28, Dolores Cepeda, 12, Sonia Johnson, 14, Christina Weckler, 20, Lauren Wagner, 18, Kimberly Martin, 17, Cindy Hudspeth, 20. Each one had dreams, families, futures, and the cousins took it all away. The city of Los Angeles was living in terror. Women stopped going out alone. Gun sales skyrocketed. The pressure on the LAPD was enormous, but the killers made no mistakes, left no evidence, until Kenneth Bianchi moved to Bellingham, Washington, and couldn't help himself.
The LAPD assembled one of the largest task forces in its history, over 100 officers dedicated to catching the Hillside Strangler. But they had almost nothing to work with. No fingerprints, no DNA technology in 1977, no witnesses who'd seen the abductions. The bodies had been washed clean, removing any trace evidence. What they did have was a pattern. The victims were all young women,
taken from Los Angeles streets, strangled with ligatures and dumped on hillsides. The killer, or killers, clearly had knowledge of the area. They knew the hillsides, the back roads, the places where bodies would be found but evidence wouldn't be. Detectives pursued thousands of leads. They interviewed psychologists, trying to build a profile. Was this one killer? Two? A group? The psychological profile suggested someone with deep-seated rage against women, someone organized, methodical, someone who wanted attention, hence the public display of bodies. But the breakthrough would come from an unexpected place. In January 1979, almost a year after the last Los Angeles murder, 2 college students were found murdered in Bellingham, Washington. Karen Mandick and Diane Wilder, both students at Western Washington University, had been strangled in a house where they'd gone for a security job. Kenneth Bianchi had lured them there. He'd moved to Bellingham with his girlfriend and their infant son, trying to start a new life, but he couldn't stop killing. This time, though, he made mistakes. Witnesses saw him with the victims. His fingerprints were at the scene, and when Bellingham police arrested him, they started making connections. Kenneth Bianchi recently moved from Los Angeles during the exact period of the Hillside Strangler murders. The LAPD sent detectives north, and Kenneth Bianchi started talking.
Kenneth Bianchi tried everything to avoid conviction. First, he claimed innocence. Then, when evidence became overwhelming, he developed a new strategy: multiple personality disorder. In interviews with psychiatrists and police, Bianchi claimed he had an alternate personality named Steve, who committed the murders. Kenneth, he insisted, had no memory of the crimes. It was Steve who was the killer. Under hypnosis, Steve would emerge, angry, violent, confessing to the murders in graphic detail. Some experts believed him. Others saw through it immediately. Dr. Martin Orn, a renowned hypnosis expert, conducted his own evaluation. He gave Bianchi subtle tests, mentioning that multiple personality disorder usually involved more than 2 personalities. The next session, Bianchi suddenly had a third personality. It was fake, all of it. Faced with the death penalty and overwhelming evidence, Kenneth Bianchi made a deal. He'd plead guilty and testify against his cousin, Angelo Buono, in exchange for life in prison instead of execution. He confessed to everything: the fake police badges, the abductions, the torture, the murders, and he gave up Angelo Buono as his partner, the dominant one, the one who'd started it all, the one who'd taught him how to kill. Angelo Buono's trial began in November 1981. It would last 2 years, one of the longest criminal trials in California history at the time. The prosecution presented witness after witness, evidence from the murders, and Kenneth Bianchi's testimony, describing in horrific detail what he and Angelo had done to their victims. Angelo Buono sat stone-faced throughout. He never confessed, never showed remorse. On October 31, 1983, Angelo Buono was convicted of 9 murders. The jury couldn't reach a unanimous decision on the 10th. He was sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. Kenneth Bianchi is also serving life without parole in Washington State. Both men are still alive today, imprisoned, aging, forgotten by most of the world. But the families of their victims, they haven't forgotten.
The Hillside Stranglers case changed Los Angeles forever. It shattered the city's sense of security, exposed vulnerabilities in how police handled multi-jurisdictional cases. The murders occurred across different cities, making coordination difficult. The case led to major reforms: better interagency communication, improved forensic techniques, more resources for violent crime task forces. But perhaps most importantly, it changed how we talk about victims. For too long, media coverage focused on the killers, their psychology, their motives. Their names became famous while the victims were reduced to statistics. Let's change that. Yolanda Washington was the first victim.
20 years old, she had dreams of becoming a model. Judith Miller, just 15, was a runaway trying to find her way home. Elissa Caston was a waitress and aspiring dancer. She had a bright smile and a kind heart. Jane King was a Scientologist student, known for her gentle nature. Dolores Cepeda was 12. Sonia Johnson was 14. Best friends, taken together. Christina Weckler was an honor student, quiet and studious. Lauren Wagner was 18, working multiple jobs to support her education. Kimberly Martin was 17, trying to survive on the streets. Cindy Lodspeth was 20, working as a dancer, beloved by her family. Karen Mandick and Diane Wilder, the Washington victims, college students with their whole lives ahead. These women and girls deserved better. They deserved to live, to achieve their dreams, to grow old. Instead, they became victims of two men's rage and depravity. In 2002, Angelo Buono died in prison of a heart attack at age 67. He never expressed remorse, never apologized to the families. Kenneth Bianchi remains in Washington State Penitentiary. He's given interviews over the years, most recently in 2024 for a documentary, claiming once again that he's innocent, that Angelo forced him, that he deserves another chance. The families of the victims see through it. They know the truth. This is the evidence room, and we believe the victims' names should be remembered longer than the killers' names. Subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join us next week as we continue to seek justice for those who can't speak for themselves. Until then, the evidence room stays open. Rest in peace to the victims of the Hillside Stranglers. You were more than headlines. You mattered. You still matter.